All right, we're live. Real quick impromptu live. So I don't really expect to hear from anybody, but in the event that I do, you have to pop in, say hi, ask questions. So the reason for doing the live here today is I wanted to answer a couple quick viewer questions and to just kind of touch base. So I'm out in Arizona right now, going through some schooling and trying to maintain my training while I'm here. Ran into a bit of a snag. The gym here says that there's no photography allowed in the gym, which is bullshit. So I'm kind of trying to fight that fight, but there's only so much I can do. So my video footage and training footage will be a little bit scant on my Instagram if you guys happen to follow me there. The mug's a bit of a misnomer. It's just a mug, and I'm drinking some tea. So let's get right into the questions and be able to touch base. So I have two questions. One is from EE. I don't dare attempt to pronounce the name because I believe it's German and I don't speak as a German. But it was a really good question, and I thought that it could be beneficial for a lot of people. So I wanted to do a quick response to it. So EE asks, he's talking about missing workouts and makeup days. And he wants to know if it's better to do the planned workout on a different day in the same week without additional work, or kind of how to go about fitting in the work that you've missed. So to really answer this question most fairly, you really need to take a look at what your goals are, because what your goals are will really dictate how you go about everything. So if you're just kind of an easygoing gym goer and you, make sure I have my chat on in case you guys happen to jump in. I think I have it right. I don't know. So if someone's here, say hi so I see if this is working right. But anyway, so your goals really dictate how you do everything. So if you're just kind of an easygoing gym goer and you want to just be generally stronger than you were before, then I don't think anything's super serious. John, what's going on, man? Beautiful, you beautiful man, you. I don't know what kind of product I use. That's something my wife got me. I don't know. But yeah, so your goals dictate everything. So if you're just an easygoing gym goer, then it's really not that serious. If something comes up and you can't make the gym or you can't get in and train, at the end state of your goal, is this really going to have some huge impact on you? So if you're just easygoing gym goer, then you're not really on any kind of set timetable in terms of you have a meet or an event or something specific in time that you're preparing for. So missing a day here or there is really not that big of a deal. And I would say don't kill yourself over it. If you are slightly more serious and you have maybe some competitive goals in mind, then something like that might be important. And how I would skin that cat is, as a competitive powerlifter interested in competing again, if I miss a training day for whatever reason, what I would do is probably make up that workload on another day. So I train 4 days a week, meaning I have several days where I'm off and I really don't train. So on one of my off days, I would probably go in and get at least the main body of work done. So I prioritize my training around the main movements. So I have 2 bench days, 1 squat day, and 1 deadlift day. So on one of my alternate days that I'm off and not performing one of those things, I would get in and at least get through that main body. So if I missed my squat workout, for example, I would go in and at least make sure that I got my squats done. Certainly messing with the day kind of messes with my my recovery and whatnot. And I have my days spaced specifically for reasons, to kind of give myself maximum recovery time, to be able to squat again or be able to lift again. So it does dip into my kind of reserve of being able to fully recover. But in the short, I would rather get the volume in and get that workload than just miss out on that workload entirely, where that having that competitive edge or that competitive vein, losing that matters. Whereas if you're not competing, then losing it doesn't really matter in the context of time. I hope that answer makes sense. But really, I think all things should be based off of what your specific goals are. So I think that maybe a lot of people forget that they're not that serious about their goals, or in terms of trying to be hyper competitive powerlifter or whatever. If you're just going to the gym to kind of generally be better than you were, then you really don't have to take anything so super serious. Palm sweat and chug. That's right, Z. So yeah, don't take things so serious unless you have to. And then, there's a time and a place for being, a bit more serious and regimented about your training. But even that probably should, come and go with time, right? So even if you are a competitive lifter, you're probably only getting ready for maybe 2 or 3 meets a year. And then after that, you're kind of just going, a little bit easier. So it really depends on where you are in your training program. And again, what your overall goals are, now that I've said that like 3 times. And then the last question that I wanted to answer, at least for today, unless something else comes in through the chat that I thought was really cool. I have Nicole T. She's checked out a few videos, and I've seen her just kind of recently popping up in the chat. She left a question, and she wanted to know what advice that I would have specifically for female soldiers on how to build strength for leg tucks. So it's an event that's coming up in the ACFT, and it's something that in some of the tests and the pilots, people have done very poorly on. So Nicole, my answer for you is not going to be necessarily specifically just for females, because I think that the things that I'm going to say will be relevant for males and females. So one of the limiting factors for the leg tuck is going to be grip strength. So as a female, grip strength may not be something that you've prioritized in your training much, maybe if at all. So working on your grip strength is going to be very important, because grip strength is going to be a significant limiting factor in your ability to hold onto the bar and stay on the bar, right? And to be able to hopefully execute more leg tucks. So working some grip strength would be good, specifically just that crush grip. So there are a variety of things that you can look up. Just for the sake of brevity on this video, I'm not going to get into a bunch of specific grip stuff that you can do. But one thing that you might be able to do that you could have access to probably wherever you are is to pick up a dumbbell or a kettlebell and just hold it for time. That will kind of emulate the same kind of grip effect that you're going to have when you hold the bar for the leg tuck. And so I would recommend working grip strength specifically. Next, kind of going down the chain, is you're going to have to work on some of your pull-up strength as well, because in order to successfully do the leg tuck, there is a pull-up aspect to it where you're actually going to be flexing the arms and bending the elbows to pull yourself up and bring the knees up to your elbows. So working on your pull-up strength is going to be very important as well. So if you don't do many pull-ups as it is right now, there are those machines that can give you some assistance. You can utilize those to set different weight values to give yourself more assistance or less assistance. If you don't happen to have one of those, you can use bands. Most of the Army gyms that I've seen around the world in the last couple of years have access to some of those bands. So you can go to the front desk and request the bands. Basically, you just do a loop of the band onto the bar, and you can put your knee or your foot into the band to give yourself some assistance on the pull-up, and then you can play with the amount of assistance that you get. So, i.e., thicker band, more assistance; smaller, thinner band, less assistance. And so, what I would recommend is get yourself to a point of progression where you can do, several pull-ups unassisted if you can't already. That's going to be very important and vital for improving your leg tuck score. And then the last piece is really the leg tuck, right? Bringing your knees up to your elbows and being able to touch the knees to the elbows is something that a lot of people struggle with. So you're going to have to kind of develop that abdominal strength as well as the hip flexor strength. So if you are incapable of doing a leg tuck successfully right now, what I might recommend is, instead of being vertical and trying to bring your feet up to your elbows, or your knees up to your elbows rather, go horizontal and just lay on the ground and maybe grab a bar or something that's stable, that's not going to move, and just work on bringing your knees up to your elbows while you're laying horizontal. That isn't a perfect approximation, but it's a breakdown of the leg tuck. And if you work on that for enough time, you can build up some of the requisite abdominal strength and hip flexor strength to bring your knees up to your elbows. And then basically you just increase the resistance over time. So some gyms have kind of the the angled sit-up thing that you can use where you can vary the height for doing sit-up purposes. All you have to do is have your head up here, feet down here, and bring the knees up to the elbows to increase the difficulty of the maneuver as compared to like the horizontal. And you just continue to build up that strength abdominally and through the hip flexors so that you're better and better able to bring those knees up to the elbows and slowly work your way up to a position of being vertical where, maybe even just hanging, with palms forward and not that alternate grip, maybe just the palms forward, work on bringing the knees, up to the elbows. So essentially what I'm advocating is you start from a position of less difficult and gradually move toward more difficult and performing the actual maneuver for potentially repetitions for yourself. I think the minimum score is 1. So if you can perform even just 1, that's a passing score for you. But I think that if you implement some of the techniques that I've mentioned, you should be able to bring up the requisite strength in the requisite areas to be able to get yourself to a point where you can do the leg tucks successfully. I had a bunch of comments come in that I wasn't reading while I was going, so let me just kind of circle back around and see what we got going on here. So Gary Sellers, looking to improve deadlift, what would you recommend moving up? Would you recommend moving up to twice a week instead of once a week? Heard folks saying you'll find it hard to improve on once a week only. Yeah, so Gary, in your case, you may find some success with deadlifting more than once a week. For myself, it tends to put myself into a hole when I do that. It just kind of chars my CNS and I have a hard time recovering from it. And I've learned that through experience. So for you, I would recommend just getting in and doing that second day and see how you recover. If you are able to tolerate the additional training value and it doesn't negatively affect other avenues or other training days or other aspects of your life, then you should be more than capable of handling that additional workload. I would just say that you add in some of that additional volume, say lightly. So case in point, you might take whatever you do for your one deadlift day now, build in a second deadlift, and then say do half the volume and see how you tolerate that for a week or two. And then if everything's fine and you feel no ill effect in any way, then maybe bump up to the same volume that you do on your other deadlift day. And so you have a full second day of deadlifting, and then just see how you feel as you go forward. Really, a lot about training is more testing. So I'm not a big fan of having different factors in their lives that will either assist or impede their recovery. And so the fact of the matter is you just don't know till you know. So Gary, I would greenlight you to give it a whirl, but I'm not your coach or anything like that. So take that with a grain of salt. Adam, what's going on, bub? Good to hear from you. I hope that you're well. Hope the training's going good, man. I know that you had some injuries and things like that and working on getting through all that. So I hope everything's going good. But have to let me know when your next meet is. So Gavin jumps in and says, is the ammonia in every working set thing or only top set thing? So Gavin, I definitely think that ammonia, no, let me back up. I think that anything you can become accustomed to, right? Like you can kind of adapt out to pretty much anything. So if you have an over reliance on something as a stimulus, I think that you can definitely, you get accommodated to it and it stops being as effective. Just think about in history of your life, songs that used to really get you amped up when you first heard them, and then you've heard it say 10,000 times. Does it get you as amped up as it used to? Maybe, but probably not. I think ammonia is kind of in the same vein. If you have an over reliance on ammonia, it becomes less and less effective. So the way that I kind of skin the cat is I'm not shy about my ammonia use, but I typically only bring it out on my heaviest sets and when I'm trying to get really into it. And then aside from that, you don't really see me messing with ammonia. but I do really enjoy ammonia. Babo. So sometimes I tend to acronym the names or the handles for people that I see over and over and over again, especially when I'm commenting. So instead of typing back, badass black overlord, I just shorten it to Babo. So I've been calling Babo for a while, and good to see you, brother. Anyway, hey Brad, haven't been active with comments lately, I noticed. But I still watch all your videos on occasion. Hopefully injury free. Any more nagging issues? I have always been kind of nagged by ongoing like calf issues. I think maybe to some small degree, I suffer from compartment syndrome, and it kind of comes and goes. So sometimes it's hard for me to predict like when I'm going to have kind of a bad time with my calves. But it really is a limiting factor for me when I run and things like that. Sometimes it can get very aggravated and is a real pain in the ass. Aside from that, I'm actually feeling pretty good. Feeling just about as strong as I've ever been. I'm working through my program right now, and I'm well into the strength block, and things are going really, really well. I'm looking at maybe competing sometime in the near future. I'll probably run maybe one more cycle of programming before I look at a meet. But once I wrap this training cycle up, I'll probably look out something in the ballpark of, somewhere between 15 to 20 weeks, depending on where a meet falls in the calendar on how close to me. And then I'll look to try to get a competition, and be the first time since 2017 2018 when I blew my right bicep. Not fun. Z, unrelated side note, Brad, if you only knew that's kind of gross. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I think Lysol is probably my friend at this point. All right, so Gavin says, thanks. Gavin, you're welcome. I appreciate that question. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to answer questions for you guys, because aside from being able to help, like specifically you, anyone that sees this may have that same question, and it could serve to help them too. So just the opportunity to try to help means a lot to me. Babo, like you want to call it. All right, cool, man. Appreciate that. Yeah. So sometimes people can get a little finicky if you like make like nicknames and shit for them. So certainly never my intention to upset anybody, but brevity, right? Adam, yes, I'm in Arizona. I am hanging out near Sierra Vista, living the dream. All right, so Chad, what's going on, man? Been a long time. Hope all is well for you. Yeah, yeah, man, everything's good. Still alive and kicking despite some of my best efforts, and everything's going pretty good. Happy, healthy. Yeah, thanks for checking in, dude. John, SLC finally nailed it. Yeah, man, I got rung in on this one. Had to check the block, so we're here making it happen. So just kind of living that trade-off life. Super fun. I did see Ian Myers. I did see him. Ran into him here. That was pretty funny. He's gonna be here for like 6 months. Okay, so yeah, Babo, when I do another meet, I definitely will be recording the whole thing and make a thing of it. And if any of you guys haven't caught it, the announcement that I did, the video, I am going to be going up to the Arnold Fitness Expo this year, and I plan on being up there, all 3 days, so Friday, Saturday, and maybe a little bit on Sunday. Just kind of walk around, bebopping, recording, and saying hi to people, and watching some of the events and things like that. So if anyone is going to be there and you happen to see me, I would love it if you came up and said hi. Jabbar, what's going on, man? Just signed up for the first meet. Hell yeah, Jabbar. That's fucking awesome, man. I tell you what, I got a warm place in my heart for folks that are getting out of their comfort zone and going and doing their first meet. I wish you the best of luck. I hope everything goes well. How far out is it? You have to let me know. H Zen. Know anyone who had an inguinal hernia and came back to pre-injury status with lift PRs? So H Zen, I've had a abdominal hernia, and I've actually torn both adductors on either side in my groin and been able to come back. So it's not an inguinal hernia, but you can come back for some pretty gnarly shit. And I think I have, if I recall, I can't think of anything real specific, but I know I've known people who had inguinal hernias and were able to come back and train and still, be fine. So yeah, you can come back from some pretty gnarly shit. Gary, cheers, man. Randy, what's going on, dude? Thanks for checking in. Appreciate having you here. Gavin, do you have a go-to for tendonitis recovery? So tendonitis stuff can be really can be a real bitch. One of my biggest things about tendonitis, stop pissing it off. So whatever it is that you're doing, there is something that you're doing that's causing an issue. If I had to guess, you're probably talking like upper body, maybe something with the elbow, something with the shoulder, perhaps. The reason why I say that is because it's something that tends to haunt a lot of people. And one of the main culprits for it is usually your fucking squat. So based on how you're squatting, it can cause a lot of tendon problems in the elbows and bicep pain too. So just initially what I recommend is, instead of trying to cram yourself in and be like wedged in like a wedge, can't think of anything funny, but instead of just wedging yourself in, open up a little bit, allow yourself to have some space. If any of you watch my squat videos, or you look back on my squat videos, when I squat, I'm well out to the collars, and I'm able to maintain tightness and not feel like I'm losing anything by allowing myself to open up like that. But it also alleviates a lot of pressure and tension on the elbow and on the shoulder. Another thing that I might recommend is use the claw grip. So this would be full grip, right? If this is the bar, my little fork here that I have my chicken patties with. So full grip, claw grip is like this, where you do this, and it allows you to externally rotate a little bit. So you can see how I can kind of rotate. So that little bit of external rotation helps with the elbows so that you're not feeling so much pressure and tension. So something like that is still a fairly secure grip. At least I feel secure with it. And it allows you to get that little bit of rotation. So it takes a little bit more strain off the shoulders and the elbows. Try that, see if it works. And if it's not the upper body stuff that's a problem, then let me know and I will give more advice. Gary, no, I'm not in Korea. So I get this question a lot in terms of my videos and stuff like that. And I really do apologize. I am very behind in what I've recorded or what I release. So the videos that I'm releasing are still stuff from back in Korea, because I essentially train every single session that I film every single session that I train. And so it creates quite a backlog, because for a while I was only releasing like 3 days a week. Whereas recently I've been trying to release more like once a day, if I can keep up with it, depending on what's going on in my life. So you're still getting a lot of videos from back in Korea, but I am back in the States now. But it having that backlog also kind of protects me from a time like right now, because the gym that's right across from me, they don't allow any filming at the moment. And I actually got in kind of a fight about it. So I'm at a bit of a dry spell in terms of being able to add to my catalog of coverage. So yeah, so you have to forgive me, but I think most of the videos aren't necessarily super time sensitive. I think they still relate, even though they're a few months old. Okay, let's see what we got. Adam, if you ever go to Texas, we need to get a session. Hell yeah, whatever. You want to hit me up, try to train. I'm always a fan of that stuff. So if I do make it to Texas, Adam, I promise I'll hit you up. Jabbar, bulking, gained a bit of belly fat, which pinches the belly. Yeah, so if you get too much of a belly, it does pinch a bit. But I'll tell you, Jabbar, in terms of being able to, put on muscle mass, I would gladly put on 10 pounds of fat to gain 3 pounds of muscle, gladly, because muscle growth and muscle development is a very difficult process. It's exhaustive and it's very hard. Fat, on the other hand, comes on pretty easy and pretty quick. It also goes pretty quick too. So, if I could be promised a solid 3 pounds of lean muscle, I would gladly put on 10 pounds of fat, because I can put the fork down and, put the nose to the grindstone and get some extra cardio and other, accessory work in or whatever else to increase my caloric output. and burn off that fat. So I think you have it. I think you have it right in terms of gaining. You're going to see a little bit about John. Let me see what you got here, man. Screen jumped on me. What a pogue. My new dad is. Oh, Parsons. Yeah, Parsons. You have to let me know. I think. Are you talking about Matt? Anyway, I'm not sure what you're getting at, John. But if you're talking about Matt, then I know the dude. But maybe not. Randy. I'd ask a question, but we already know that I know. Okay, yeah. I mean, truly, the font of knowledge. Yeah. So Jabbar, March 28th. All right, man. Good luck with it. I hope the training goes well and you get geared up and you're able to hit some new PRs, man. That's awesome. H Zen, good to know. Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Babo, Brad, that claw grip tip is fucking awesome. I can't wait to try it. Can you apply the same tech to your belly for a squat grip? Because if you're squatting, as you're squatting, you're holding that weight, a lot of that pressure is going to be sitting here in the thumb area. And there's not a lot of pressure in the pinky. You might think that it's really going to be hurting the pinky, but it really doesn't, because you're able to kind of grip that with the thumb. Whereas if you rotate the gravity and the bar is now being held by the pinky, I don't think that would be very comfortable. So it actually is the reason why I choose to go with a thumbless grip on bench. It's definitely not for everybody. A lot of people have reservation about it in terms of the safety or whatever. But I've seen people with a full grip straight dump a bar as well. So I think that anytime you're getting underweight, there's some inherent risk. I typically like that thumbless grip because as I grip, I can also rotate. So by being able to rotate my hands, it's more comfortable for me. And I feel like I get more tricep drive when I do that. If you're curious about it, I'd recommend trying a very, very light, manageable weight and do some sets with thumbless and see how it feels. I feel a lot more tricep bite and drive. So I feel like thumbless is a far superior grip in terms of pressing power, but that's my bias. Adam, tendonitis has been affecting my elbow too. Once I hit 450 on top sets, it starts aching bad. Thanks for the tips. I'm going to use SSB. Yep. So, getting away from a straight bar is also a great way to try to give yourself some time and space and allow that tendon to rest a bit. Because if you're experiencing tendonitis, almost certainly you're doing something that's flaring it up and causing the problem. So I think one of the first things to do is try to recognize what the problem movement is, or what's exacerbating the issue, and then stop or pivot or do something where you can get the workload that you're looking to get in, but not keep pissing off the tendon. Gavin, thanks for the tips. Got to head to bed. I have an 8-mile ruck tomorrow. Fuck that. But good luck, buddy. Gary, happier being back in the States now? Yes. Being back in the States is super awesome. And all that it entails. I'm not with the family right now, but being home and being close to the family again is really like the only thing that makes me tick. So being able to share time and space with my family again, it's huge. So really put my heart and soul at ease coming back to the States, and so just got to knock out this little challenge and then back home again. John, what we say are the two most important muscles to focus on when you're starting to. If I would say that there's any two muscles that are the very, very most important, what I would say is, especially if you're getting back into the gym for the first time, that getting the most bang for your buck is probably, getting in, doing the big three movements, doing squat, doing bench, doing deadlift, because those exercises, and maybe overhead press if you want to include that, but those movements are going to include the most muscularity. And so in terms of time investment, you're going to get the most bang for your buck from those exercises than you would from something very narrow in scope and specific, like a concentration curl, for example. So more than any just two muscle groups, I would say focus on those three movements. But if I had to pin it down to an area, I would say legs, because working your legs really does have an effect on the whole body. And it's been said, kind of in that bro science circle for a long time, that, squatting really makes everything grow. And I do genuinely believe that. I believe that when you incorporate squats into your routine, it really has a good effect for skeletal muscle mass development. So I think legs is super important. New platoon sergeant, can't remember his first name, last name Parsons. Yeah. There's actually, oh, you know what? I do know him, and he's actually in my class. I know exactly who you're talking about, and he seems like a really solid dude. I don't know how much time you had to co-locate with him, but he sits like 5 dudes away from me in class, and he's a solid ass dude. He makes me laugh. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Z, I went using wide big boy grip while squatting. Does mitigate that elbow pain. Preach. And so for any of you guys that don't know, Z is a really good friend of mine, probably one of my best friends. And he is got all kinds of education in sports science and stuffs. So he does a lot more research and is more scientifically minded in that vein than I am. And he usually ends up pushing me a lot of stuff. So when I come across things or I find cool things, it's usually because he pushed it to me. Yeah, Babo. Talking to Maurice, it looks like. Looks a little ridiculous, but makes sense. So ironic because elbow issues has never been an issue until I started repping 3-plate 25 box squats. So I'm telling you guys, squats are a terror on elbows and shoulders. So if you are having elbow and shoulder pain and you're like, I don't know where it's coming from, it's probably squatting. If you have the opportunity to vary it up and throw some SSB or some other stuff in there, and you're not constrained by a program or other goal, then I would totally recommend that you add in some variant to give your elbows and your shoulders some breathing space. Adam says, have a hard time getting that wide on the bar. My shoulders hurt when I go wide with squat. Shoulder mobility is great. Okay, so the other thing that you can do is, just some movement ahead of time. If you have the voodoo floss, you can band up your elbow real tight and go through some range of motion where you're flexing and extending that joint and putting pressure on those tendons and ligaments. You can do some body tempering. So you can grab a kettlebell and kind of roll it around on the joint, not on the bone because that would hurt, but that soft tissue. Roll that implement, whether it's a kettlebell or something else, roll that around on the tissue. That can be a really good way of drawing blood into that tissue and helping to kind of insulate from issues. So blood into that tissue can help prevent some of the pain and stiffness and tightness that you may be experiencing. So that might be a way to mitigate some of the elbow pain that you feel, is use some voodoo floss, use some body tempering, and do some mobility stuff with the elbow before accepting load. That might help. So Babo, you're asking how tall I am. I am 73 inches, so like almost 6'2", I think 74 inches is 6'2", and I think I come in just shy of that. So I'm not super tall, but I'm not super short either. So you guys are not talking to me now, you're talking to each other, which is interesting. Yeah, so Babo, try the going light and see how it feels with the thumbless grip. I think that's what you're referring to. You may find that it's advantageous. I found that some of the people that I've worked with, just hands-on and kind of going through stuff, when I get them to try a thumbless grip and they build comfort with it, that they tend to like it more as well. Just food for thought. All right, John. Hey, man, I appreciate you checking in, dude. It's good to hear from you. You're welcome, and I will tell Parsons you said hello. Um, Z says some of the guys with elbow pain can also benefit from the explanation of stacking on the bench. Yeah. So what Z is referring to is something I mention a lot, which is the idea of stacking. So some people tend to go super wide grips. So if you go super wide grip, there's tension on your wrist, and the wrist is way out over here, and then there's tension on the elbow and then tension on the shoulder. So when you go those really wide grips, that can put a lot of stress and strain on the shoulder. If you go a little bit more in, everything stacks on itself. So the bone structure, the skeletal system, can support some of the load. So sometimes when people experience some elbow pain or shoulder pain, they can have a benefit or an alleviation of some of that pain if they bring their grip in a little bit and use a little bit more of their skeletal system to support the weight. Interestingly enough, I think too, it is from a raw perspective, a more advantageous position to bench in, more narrow versus, super way out wide. I know that there are some people that do that and they really enjoy it, more power. But I mean, more power to them. But I genuinely believe that for a raw bencher, you're going to have more power having just a slightly wider than shoulder width grip thereabout. Some individual variety may exist. Randy talks to himself and answers too. If the voices in your head start speaking Spanish, then probably got problems. Up from a 177 to 200. Awesome. Jabbar, that's good, man. That's good growth. That's really good growth, So just understand that as you continue in your progress and your through time, gains become harder and harder. So the more trained you become, it's kind of like climbing a pyramid, right? So as you get higher and higher on the pyramid, there's less and less room to grow, right? So less space for you to grow on. So a lot of the real big gains, real big growth, come earlier in your lifting career. It tends to taper off, and so instead of measuring things in growth of tens of pounds or whatever, you might. I wouldn't look a pound. I wouldn't turn down a pound of growth. I think being able to grow anything is huge. 6'5" and go to 210 and then cut. Well, Jabbar, I mean, it really depends on you, man. It depends on what your overall goals are and where you want to be. If you want to take competing in powerlifting seriously, what I will tell you is if you are the tallest person in your weight class, you're probably in the wrong weight class. So what that means is, people tend to try to gain weight and put on mass, and you being 6'5", you're going to be a taller boy. So, someone that is hyper competitive is going to be in the upper echelons of the weight scales, and to be commiserate with the amount of people that he's competing with, who have also put requisite mass on their frames. At 6'5", you've got a lot of room on your frame to be able to put mass. But again, I circle around to personal goal. It doesn't necessarily matter what anyone else is doing, as long as you are where you want to be and you're doing what you want to do. Then what anyone else does or says is really irrelevant. As long as you're happy with your body composition and your performance, then I'd say to hell with any idea about some ideal about where you should be. And if someone else is doing something else, let them, because you can only control you. Blood spits. I've had to take time off from the gym, but I did my 3 maxes this past weekend, and oddly enough, my bench weight went up and my deadlift weight went down. Any idea why these are fluctuating like that? So, you've been, at least from what I've seen in the last few weeks, you've kind of pushing the bench a little bit and getting into the upper echelons. So one of my biggest recommendations is, don't test strength, build strength. So if you're in this kind of period where you're, very curious about where your weights are, and you've been trying out some new form techniques and things like that, and you want to see how it, how it affects your weights, I certainly understand the curiosity, but constantly kind of pushing yourself into the red line can have some just overarching negative effects, including affecting some of the other lifts. It also could be, anything that you have going on with work, anything that you have going on personally, the amount that you're eating, the amount that you're sleeping, how hydrated you are. So there really are a number of factors that could come into play for why your numbers are fluctuating. I know some people, when they gain weight, it has a negative effect on their deadlift. So gaining weight actually makes their deadlift go down. It's hard to say without, being able to put you under a microscope and watching everything that you're doing. But I would say taking some steps back from the upper echelons of your strength is probably a good thing. Again, kind of circling back around on my comment about the pyramid, right? If you imagine your overall training career as a pyramid, the peak being, 1 rep maxes, and the base being the majority of your work, the majority of your work is really going to be probably something in the ballpark of, 55% to up to maybe 80%. That is where the vast majority of all your work is really going to exist. And only every now and then are you really going to start fluctuating up and drifting up above that 85%, and getting into true 1 rep maxes and things like that, ideally. Because again, your body is really like a machine. And the more you redline a machine, the more you open it up to, breakdown and issues. And your body's not much different. So if you keep redlining your body, you may find more issues, kind of crop up from that. So I'd say dial the testing back and get yourself more into a training pattern. Build strength, don't test it. Z says, before Brad, I was a nice and slim 215. After Brad, I'm 265, stereotypical powerlifter, round but strong. All right. Yeah, it's funny. If you look back at some of the photos of Z before he started training with me, it doesn't even look like the same guy, to be honest. It's funny. All right, Z, have a good night, brother. Appreciate you checking in. Blood, you're welcome, man. Yeah, I'll be back before too long. All right, so we got a few people kind of hanging out, and this is a lot longer than I intended it to go. If you guys have any other questions that you'd like me to get after right here, right now, drop them in the comment box, and I will definitely respond. So I'll hang out for a few more minutes and see what kind of comes through. Babo, heading to the store. Thanks for the invaluable tips, Brad. Hey, you're welcome, man. Glad to help. Appreciate you checking in. Good to see you pop up in the chat. Gary, do you need to do single reps really heavy on the deadlift in order to improve your 1 rep max, or better sets of 5 or so? I would honestly say that doing some heavy work is important so that you can feel that weight. Getting experience with and feeling that load and that strain, I think, is valuable to a point. So it can very easily be overdone. I think the majority of work would probably be done in that 5 rep range. So, for the average lifter, if you're serious about, bringing your numbers up, most of your weight, rep wise, is going to be in the, 5s, 8s, 10s. That's a lot of the volume where you're going to be at. And more rarely moving to like 3s and singles. I think singles definitely have value, like I said, to feel the weight, but it's not something that I would use a lot because of the drain on your CNS. And really, when you hit a 1 rep max, I mean, you're not building any strength when you do that. Strength building all comes from that lower intensity, higher volume stuff. So those 5s and whatnot. XW finally caught one of these live. Hey man, good to have you here. I probably should give more notice and warning when I'm going to do these. But I usually just have something that gets on my mind and I go after it. How do you do deload weeks? I'm sure it's fairly complicated, but I'm trying to do one before my first strongman comp, and I want to see how others do it. Okay, so I hope that this will help more than just XW if anyone sticks around long enough for this bit of advice. But I think deload weeks are important. And I think that deload weeks don't have to be easy. And so what I would say is when you have a program and that you write out the program yourself or the coach gives it to you or whatever the case is, the program is essentially written in a vacuum. So we have no idea of knowing how we're going to feel on whatever day. So you're going to be accumulating a lot of fatigue as you carry through time on the program. It's good occasionally to allow yourself to decay fatigue, to recover. So the deload weeks don't need to be easy weeks, but that doesn't mean like you have to like full throttle and keep rolling on the program. So what I've done recently with my deload weeks is, let's say, just for argument's sake, let's say I'm at week 4, I'm at 75% intensity. Week 8 is my deload week, and say week 9, I'm at 80%. Well, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll look forward to the week after my deload week and figure out where I am intensity-wise. And on my deload week, I will perform the intensity of that upcoming week. But a lot of times I will reduce the volume drastically. So again, just for argument's sake, not a real scenario. If my program called for 80% for say 5 reps for say 5 sets, I might only do say 3 reps for 5 sets, or I might do 3 reps, 3 sets. So I've hit the same intensity that I'm going to be hitting in the subsequent week after my deload, but I've stepped back on the volume quite drastically. And so by coming back on that volume, I'm giving my body an opportunity to be able to kind of take that breath and recover, so to speak. But I'm also staying on that intensity, so that in terms of the weight that I feel and that that kind of neural cue of dealing with heavier and heavier weight, I don't detrain in terms of like the weight that I'm used to holding. You may feel something similar, if you train with a certain weight for several weeks in a row, and then back off for several weeks and then try to get back to that weight. Sometimes that weight will feel heavier than you remember it feeling. I try to stay on the intensity, keep the intensity high. But deload weeks are always very specific to how I feel. So while I generally have a practice on how I approach it, it all is based on how I feel. So if I'm particularly trashed after a couple of weeks of training, I typically go 3 up, 1 down. So 3 hard training weeks and then 1 deload week. So if after three training weeks I'm pretty beat up and I'm really hurting, then I might step down on the intensity and the volume. So it again, I kind of play that audible on that week depending on how I feel. So kind of a lengthy response to that question, but I think how you approach deload is pretty important. And I don't think it's a one size fits all solution. I think that how you approach each deload will vary depending on what's going on in your life and how you're feeling, if you're doing it right. That's just my opinion. Randy, thank you. Gary, thank you. Jabbar, talking to some coaches, a bunch of guys at the gym. I want to start working on for my meet, but he said something that got you worried. He said on strength days, they'll rarely be below in RPE 8. So I don't use RPE system, but I do move through time in kind of a phasic structure. So I have a hypertrophy block, I have a strength block, and I have a peaking block. And each is kind of shorter than the other. So my hypertrophy is my biggest block. Strength is a little bit shorter, and the peak is very short. It's usually only 2, maybe 3 weeks before a meet. So by the time I'm moving into my strength work, I am dealing with heavier heavier numbers. So my strength block is really like 75% and up. I don't know if I could describe that as an RPE8, but it's not uncommon as you're moving through your training session to get into some heavier work. But Olympic training is very different than powerlifting. They have different skill factors and they have different requirements. So I would be reticent to work with a coach who didn't perform the same things that I perform or didn't have the understanding and the experience in the avenues that I was looking to perform. I don't know if I would. I wouldn't work with anyone that I wasn't impressed with their work, their numbers, their lifts for powerlifting. So take that for what it is. Except you're welcome, man. Glad to help out anytime. I hope that the explanation about the deload makes sense. If you have any additional questions or I was somehow unclear, ask me at another point in time, or maybe I could do a separate video specifically talking about deloads and things like that, and kind of how I approach it. And certainly how I approach it is not the end-all, be-all, but it is what works for me. So stick with what you know, right? All right, guys, I think that'll probably do it. I stuck around, got some good questions in. I really do appreciate all you guys jumping in. It was way more active in the chat than I would have even imagined. So I definitely appreciate the support and the interest, and it means a lot to be able to offer some thoughts that might be able to help you guys out. So definitely keep the questions coming. Don't be afraid to hit me up in the comment section of any of my videos, or hit me up on Instagram or whatever. Definitely enjoy the opportunity to be able to try to help you guys, and really enjoy the opportunity to be able to kind of engage with you. So it's really awesome that a lot of guys showed up and hung out with me. So thanks for hanging out with me. We'll call it there. So Jabbar, good luck. If you have more questions, just hit me up, and I promise I'll get back to you guys. Yeah, guys, you definitely help me out. If you have friends and people that you know and I don't, you could share the video with or share the channel with, and try to get some more people kind of coming the way. That would mean a lot to me. And remember, guys, no matter what it is you think you can't do, got to get in, train despite. You're either going to find an excuse, you're going to find a way. And I hope that you guys continue to find the way. Thank you for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Click the button. Click the button. The button.